Hi, everyone. I'm Kai Dickens, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to the Talk Tracks. In this series, we dive deeper into the revelations, challenges, and unexpected truths from the telepathy tapes. The goal is to explore all the threads that weave together our understanding of reality, science, spirituality, and yes, even unexplained things like psi abilities. If you haven't yet listened to Season 1 of the telepathy tapes, I encourage you to start there. It lays the foundation for everything we'll be exploring in this journey. We'll feature conversations with groundbreaking researchers, thinkers, non-speakers, and experiencers who illuminate the extraordinary connections that may defy explanation today, but won't for long. I'm so glad you're joining us on this journey. As promised, our first bonus episode is about a volunteer named Dan who's been working with non-speakers in Chicago for the past 4 months. You met him briefly in the 10th episode when I visited Maria's classroom in Chicago.
I've got him doing all sorts of things. He's working on my website, organizing notes.
I met Dan about 5 years ago. He had produced a series of short films that I had created, and then we lost touch. But after the second episode of the telepathy tapes was released, he reached out.
I know your email. So I said, hey, I connect with this in a very deep way, and I want to learn more. And what do you recommend I do? I could be of assistance to the production or to somebody locally.
And I instantly thought the best thing for Dan would be to work with non-speakers, so I connected him with Maria.
It's been the most life-changing month and a half so far of my life, volunteering with her and seeing firsthand both the immense struggles that the spellers encounter on a daily basis in so many arenas, and also just these unreal gifts.
The wisdom and the beauty and the way that the spellers see the world and perceive the world is so much different. There's this lack of ego, this lack of control, this lack of needing to profit off things. And instead, it's like interconnection, literally sharing thoughts. It's a really beautiful form of human experience. As a group, they're the most beautiful people I've ever been around. They're incredible teachers. I've learned so much being with them for the past 3 months.
A lot has unfolded just in the past 4 months that Dan has been volunteering in Maria's classroom. And part of the reason, of course, is that the telepathy tapes came out and completely changed the conversation and awareness in classrooms like Maria's.
Yes, there's been a lot. They're happy that people now know what they're able to do, because I feel like they've been kind of hiding these parts of them because we weren't able to, one, process it, and two, I think they were worried about what people might think. But I think they want it out there. And I think there's a lot more that's going to come depending on how quickly they think we can handle it.
Now that telepathy isn't a hidden secret anymore, Maria has allowed time for her students to connect this way. Dan has observed some of these moments.
Yesterday morning, we had 7 students in a single room, all thought sharing with each other for 10 minutes.
And it just goes dead silent.
Thought sharing is a term I'm hearing more often to describe telepathic conversations.
When they're physically in the same space, thought sharing, they seem to really like it.
From what Maria and Dan explained, it seemed like their awareness and acceptance around thought sharing has opened up ways of new understanding and empathizing with their students.
This person one day was almost in tears on the floor, and I never seen him like that. Like he was really struggling to be in my space that day. And finally, I got him to get up in the chair, and I said, okay, what's going on? And he said, oh, I'm sharing with another student. He's just sadder than usual today because of this certain thing that had happened.
And because telepathy was an open conversation in her classroom, this conversation was able to unfold.
And I wanted to be there for him. So they're really connected. It's beyond the way I think we as speakers are connected.
Maria also offered some other insights into things unfolding in her classroom recently.
They all want to learn about timelines right now, like predicting.
Okay, so wait, what do you mean by timelines and predicting?
We had lunch. Maria and I went to get lunch, and then we had a session with this student. And Maria asked him, do you know what we ordered? And he said, yes, you had a brisket bowl. And then Maria asked, do you know what he had? And he said, a chicken burrito. And I never met him before. And he knew what I had for lunch. And then Maria asked, how did you know this? And he said, I remote viewed your lunch.
As I watched them recounting this on Zoom, I was just touched and delighted to see Dan and Maria cycling through the types of questions that nobody else understands unless you're immersed in the beautiful world of the non-speakers.
She didn't know what I ordered, and he knew what I got, and she didn't know what I was eating.
We remote viewed when we were there, but how did he know where we were?
He went back in time.
I think in their thoughts, they can actually go ahead and view things. He went back in time, though.
For those of you new to this term, remote viewing is the practice of using one's mind to gather information about a person, place, or even an object in a distant space without relying on our physical senses. And we will be doing an episode on the CIA's legitimate remote viewing program that lasted for 20 years.
He remote views a lot. He's also remote listened to the telepathy tapes through my ears.
Wait, he did what?
He said, John Paul likes to swim under the moon. And I said, he sure does, doesn't he? I said, so you listen to the telepathy tapes. Your mom must have downloaded it. And he said, no, I listened it when you listened to it. And I said, how? And he said, through your ears. And I said, okay, what time did I listen to it? And he said, 10:15. And I know it was 10:15 because I was driving to the dentist and I was almost late.
It's remarkable to think that in 3 short months, Dan has witnessed all of this and more. But in a broader sense, after learning what Dan's been through, it's remarkable that he's even there at all.
I developed this autoimmune disease, Behçet's, that left me hospitalized at one point in January of 2023, unable to walk or open my jaw to get mush banana through my front teeth. And then earlier this year, January 2024, I was diagnosed with cancer. I had stage 4 lymphoma. It was in my bones, in my organs, in my lymph nodes. I faced death.
I really had to get control of my thoughts, honestly, because the more control of your thoughts you are, the less stress. And if you can relieve the stress, like thoughts come before everything. And so I was really focused on thoughts.
You weren't necessarily like some guru meditator who was doing gong baths. You were just sort of an average guy.
I'm an average dude listening to chill music and doing breath work is essentially it. I'm not going to the Tibetan mountains for 5 years.
So even though Dan wasn't some expert meditator, his breath work and mindfulness started to impact his life.
Some interesting things started happening. I started lucid dreaming, and within those lucid dreams, I had some pretty intense spiritual experiences that kind of left things to be unexplained.
And I know you have a student coming in, but Dan, can you just quickly share what happened regarding your visit to the hill? It's just such a critical, data point in this unfolding world, and it's been happening in real time.
So, I've gone to the hill 3 times. So I was saying before, I lucid dream. I do a lot of meditation, clearing the mind, everything like that. So the first time I went, I sent out a test signal, and I was trying so hard every night. I just want to go to the hill. I want to bring my brain to the frequency of the hill. And so I had a lucid dream where I went to a hill and it was completely empty. It was just completely empty. There was nothing there, but it was beautiful. Tried going in meditation, couldn't find it in meditation as hard as I tried. And then I continued to try. And then finally, it was one night in this half awake, half asleep state, I started hearing this really faint signal of a voice. And I was like, I don't know if I'm dreaming. I don't know if I'm sleeping. I don't know if this is a lucid dream. I don't know if I'm awake, but I'm just going to roll with it. And it was like a quiet radio signal, but it was clearly a voice. And it was the voice of a teacher. And I said, what's your name? And it was muffled and I couldn't make out the name. And I was like, how do I get to the hill? And the voice said, relax into it, stop forcing it, allow it to happen. And I was like, okay. Immediately, I felt I was there. And one of the students, I could hear his voice. And it sounds weird because as they're non-speakers, how do you know it's this person's voice? and it just sounded like what their voice would sound like. And I just knew their energy. And I told him, you did really well today spelling. That was the first time I met him. And he told us in session, he goes to the hill in the middle of the night. And so that was kind of a helpful little tip. So we had some dialogue back and forth. And then other student came up and said hello. And I knew immediately who that student was based on his voice, based on the energy that he was talking with. And I said, okay, I want you to remember this, all right? My mom's name is Amy. And then I told him my dad's name. And then I told him my sister's name. And I said, you got it? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay, cool. So the following week, we had session with the student who I talked to on the hill. So it's like, okay, we can verify this. Either I said it and you received it, or maybe I thought I was speaking to you and I wasn't. So Maria said, Daniel thinks he talked to you on the hill. Is that true? And he said, yes. And then Maria said, okay, what did he say? And the student typed, his mom's name is Amy. And I lost it. I lost it.
Was your mind clear? Is there any way that he was mining that information out of your mind?
Possibly could happen, right? I was doing my best to clear my mind and not give him anything. Sometimes we just say pumpkin, 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 pumpkin in our heads to not thought share. And also there's this thing that they aim to speak the truth and not deceive. So if he responds, yes, we spoke on the hill, and then he says what we said.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So I went back a second time and then a third time. It's a peaceful place. I did a lot of work before, because once they said you need to go in with loving energy, of doing body scan meditations, of clearing out ego, of clearing out anger, pain, the low vibrational things, and filling up with love. Because the second time, it's really hard to describe the specifics of the sounds, but there's an audio thing associated with it. But yeah, the second time I spoke to 4 students here, and then a student who I have never met, who lives in a different state. And she introduced herself, and I'm like, is this my imagination or is this real? I don't know. There's no way for me to verify it. There's also a teacher. Not sure if that's a person. They're certainly helpful because the teacher is the first person I talked to, and it allowed me to talk to these other students. And then I've also spoken to a spokesperson type as well.
What do they do, or what do they say?
First, I said to the group, after I had this back and forth with 4 of the students here, I said, I'm friends with Kai, and my name is Daniel. You are, by the way, an awesome calling card because people like you on the hill. So there was this collective voice, and I said, thank you for letting me into your space. And this collective voice said, hey, you found us. And I said, do I have permission to share this? And the collective voice said, absolutely.
Then Dan, could you see the hill, or could you just hear on it?
It is, for me, it was just a frequency. It was just an audio frequency that was coming in. It was extremely peaceful. Everybody I talked to, one thing I really liked from the collective voice was we have disagreements, but we're all friends here.
And did it feel like chatter, or how do you find someone to isolate them, you know?
People came to me.
So how much time are you able to spend there? You know, can you stay for a while, or is it like it's like a minute or 2 and then you're out?
Holding yourself in a state of self-hypnosis is difficult. It's extremely challenging. The longest I've done it was the second time, which I'd say was about 40 minutes. What has been a lot easier for me is thought sharing with a divine being that collects the thoughts on the hill and then stores them. So this is a divine voice that I don't have to put myself in self-hypnosis for. I can do it if my mind is quiet and I can ask a question and it comes back very methodical and very slow. And I have talked to this being on the hill probably a dozen times. It kind of can speak on behalf of the spellers. I've been able to ask a speller if this is a shared experience for them, and it sounds like yes, but I would love to get further clarity if like this is a being that they're aware of and they talk to, or if this is something that, because with all of this, like you're always wondering like, hey, is this communication I had, is this a figment of my imagination? Is this my creativity, or is this real? But when I get an unexpected answer, I could say that sounds like it's real.
Have you asked the voice? Are you like a collective conscious? Are you a guide? Are you an angel? Are you some other non-human intelligence? Are you God? Like, have you just asked them to introduce themselves?
Yeah, they're a divine being that collects the thoughts and puts them in safekeeping.
After Dan told me the story, I had worries about voice users going to this private place, no matter how pure their intentions are. And Dan knows as well as me that any groups who are marginalized need a safe place to call their own. So with Dan's permission, I reached out on our large group text with parents and teachers to see if any of their students or kids had encountered a voice user on the hill. And if so, was it okay that he was there? Scott, Lily's father, wrote me this. I asked Lily if a voice user came to the hill, and she spelled yes. Here's her exact words.
Yes, Dan came to the hill. Dan is welcome on the hill because he is a true friend and ally.
Scott asked if people with bad intentions ever come to the hill, and Lily spelled yeah.
Yeah, we send them away. Our energy overpowers them.
I talked with Dan a bit more about my worries, and Dan wrote me a beautiful text. I asked him if I could read it to you, and he said yes. And here's the text. Kai, from my understanding of the hill, and Lily can correct me if I'm wrong, there are strong divine beings protecting the hill. It's not like Halliburton can come in and buy it off. Nothing on earth can overtake it. These divine beings that I've encountered so far, and if I'm listening correctly, teach, communicate, hold thoughts, and protect the integrity of it. It's a beautiful and holy place. End quote. I asked Lily about this next, and she said,
Dan is correct. They are appointed to protect the hill and hold the space holy for non-speakers and their friends. They mainly stay in the background. Really want to meet Dan in person.
The spellers and the hill are divinely protected. One of the things I was most concerned about when I first got there was like, if I can get there, that means like the weapons industrial complex can get there. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am concerned. And the response from the spokesperson was essentially, this space is divinely protected. We're more concerned about you and your health and disrupting your sleep to have these communications than you should be about us. Like, we're good, essentially. Like, the space is protected.
So it seems as though some of us mere voice users with the right intentions, hearts, and minds can access the hill. Dan and I have talked about this a bit, mostly just me marveling that he accessed this place. How? Is there something just uniquely special about Dan? So I asked him.
That is a loaded question. Like, I grew up othered. I was a queer Jewish boy in Iowa. There was one of two out of the 430 kids in my graduating class who were Jewish. So I always felt othered. I always felt different. And then in my 20s and 30s, I developed this autoimmune disease, Behçet's. And then earlier this year, January 2024, I was diagnosed with cancer. I faced death. I've suffered mightily through disease. I felt othered. And while I don't think that is all that brought me to the hill, I think it helped to empathize with an experience of somebody who faces being different every day.
To end Dan's story, he just sent me a current x-ray of his body. The cancer that was supposed to take his life is gone. It's in remission. And he attributes this to controlling his thoughts. He deeply believes thoughts control our physical and spiritual reality. And as he explained this in his text thread, I smiled with all of my being, because his deep personal understanding about the importance of thoughts also may have helped him punch his ticket to the hill. That's it for this episode of the Talk Tracks, but new episodes will now be released every other Sunday, so stay tuned as we work to unravel all the threads, even the veiled ones, that knit together our reality. Please remember to stay kind, stay curious, and that being a true skeptic requires an open mind.